Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's garden video. So as I do every week, I'm going to go through sequentially what I did during the week, and as we've had some nice sunny days, even though my greenhouse isn't heated, it does get really warm in there when the sun's shining. So this week I had to do a lot of watering to my starts. I want to make sure that they're doing really well, and they really dry out. The compost mix that I use is very light and fluffy, which I like. I think it really is great for germinating these seeds and getting them going and getting the roots developed, but it also means that they dry out real fast. So the best and most effective way I think to do this, because they, even if you top water them, they don't really necessarily get watered all the way through unless you really keep up with it, is to set them in a tray there and let them soak. And as I looked at my seedlings, my onions have had a really tough time germinating this year. I kind of got one going, so I'm struggling with that. But early in the week, the lettuces had taken off. Those are a bunch of them coming up. They need to be divided, and you'll see me do that later in the video. I also noticed that a couple of my cabbages started to pop through, and they started germinating, which is pretty exciting. I also noticed that some peas had popped up through the soil, which I think is great, but I don't like to leave peas specifically in these little trays very long. I like to get them in the ground once they've germinated. I just like to know where things are when I plant them in the ground, which is why I like to see them germinate in those little seed pods, but I don't like to leave them in there very long. So I immediately popped those peas out, and you see them, the new ones compared to the ones that have been in the ground for a bit. Last week I also had this total random beet that had come up, and I thought I'm just going to throw it in the ground like really early and see if it survives, and it's still surviving, but you can see it compared to the beets that I've overwintered. I also noticed that my fava beans are coming up, which is in a way exciting and also not. I'm not a big fan of processing the fava beans, but they are fun to have, and Jeff really loves them. And I always have helpers when I'm out in the garden, so this is me feeding Elliot a beet leaf. A couple days later, I went back in and took a look at how my seedlings were doing, and I noticed that the beet roots were starting to grow to and through the bottom of these seed pods. And for me, that's plenty of root development. I know a lot of people like to almost have like a root ball when they plant them out, but for me, I just like to make sure the roots are established and good to go, especially when we're having mild weather. So I spent some time planting out my beets this week, which I did them in 2 stages. So you see me here doing a little batch of them this day, and I did more a couple days later. And as you saw earlier in the video, with everything popping up and a bunch of my new lettuces starting, my replacement lettuces for the ones that got eaten down, I needed to divide them, and I've said in the past, I really divide them when they're just babies, like before they even have true leaves. I feel like they survive really well, and it's really easy to separate them out, especially when I plant as many as I do in these seed trays. So I spent a lot of time in the greenhouse dividing them out, and then I had these leftover ones, kind of like I did with the beets. I had these leftover little seedlings that I didn't even have spots for, so I just threw them in the ground, and we'll see if they survive. I also thought that I like to direct sow very few things. I direct sow beans and I direct sow peas, and kind of to mix it up to give the plants just a different flavor and just to time them out differently and stuff. I did spend some time direct sowing some peas into the ground along my trellis here that I'm growing peas up. So you saw me a couple days prior, just a few minutes ago earlier in this video, plant out some seeds early in the week that had sprouted, and now a couple days later I'm actually planting out some seeds directly in the ground, and we'll see how they do. Generally speaking, I have a good germination rate, good success rate with that, and abundance of peas, so I'm excited about that. I came into the greenhouse one day and I noticed that my beets, for whatever reason, that I had not planted in the ground, because I planted some in the ground before, and these were some ones I was leaving in there for a couple days more, they had been like beaten down, which is so weird because it's in my greenhouse, and then like there's like scratching happening there. So I think I found like a mouse turd in a couple of those. So I think a mouse actually got in there and was futzing around with them. So I thought, well, I'll throw them outside and maybe I'll plant them. And then I decided, let's just go for it. I planted the other beets that were the same age in the ground earlier in the week. Let's just plant the rest of them out. So here's me planting out the rest of my beets. I had also taken a look at the potatoes I had been storing over winter as my seed potatoes for this year, and I actually looked at 2 things. One, I wanted to make sure that they were getting ready to go, and they are developing those root systems and the eyes on the potatoes. I have 2 different varieties. You see me here holding an Ozette potato, which is local to the area, and then I also just have gold potatoes. So here I am planting them out. When I looked back at my schedule from last year, I had planted these maybe a month ago already last year, and they were already sprouting above the ground at this point in time. So in a way I'm behind, but I'm not really behind. I'm not really worried about it. But here you see me going ahead and throwing my potatoes in the ground, and I'm excited about those. I also took some time to plant out my onions. The few that I've gotten to get going, as little as they've gotten going, I've decided to put them in the ground, and we'll see if I can get more germinated, because I do eat a lot of onions and I do like to have a good crop, but they've been stubborn for me. And of course, I do need to start more things. Again, last year I started things really early. I didn't really pay attention to how early I was starting things, and I kind of was reviewing where I was in my schedule of planting things last year, and noticed that I had already started my tomatoes and a bunch of things already by this point in time, because I want to get them to be pretty good sized plants before they go out, and I plant them out sometime mid-May here in the Pacific Northwest. So I thought, gosh, it's only, less than a couple months till mid-May, so I better get these tomatoes started. So dug through my tomato seeds. I actually saved some of my own seeds, even though I saved some of my own, and I have a couple seeds left over from previous packs that I bought. But I've got them started, and I've got them germinating, and hopefully we'll get them germinated and growing up in the next week or so. And I also just spent a bunch of time on this particular day in the greenhouse just starting new things, dividing things out, here I am planting some more peas, some purple peas specifically. Yeah, I'm just going to overload that pea trellis. I've got some celery started and some parsley, and that's in the same container as my tomatoes. And as all of my seedlings have started to grow up and doing really well in germination, I needed to divide a bunch of them. So here you see me just dividing out what is growing up. So I end up with 1 plant per seed tray. And lastly, what I did this week is I did a project. Finally, you guys have seen me if you've been following me. You saw me put together this wood framing for what I'm going to have be some perennial garden beds that I took over from my chicken run that used to be there. And I finally went out and got some dirt, some compost, and picked some up, and here I am filling up the dirt into these beds. I hope to grow asparagus here, and I hope to grow some berries like boysenberry, blackberries. I'm not really sure exactly what varieties I'm going to get, but I do hope for this to be a section for berries and a section for asparagus in my garden. And I don't know if you guys are going to notice this as I'm sending this in, double speed and time lapse or whatever, but that wheelbarrow, when it's full of dirt, is so heavy, and I have to put all my weight in it just to get it going, and kind of a pain in the butt. But I'm very happy with the outcome, getting stuff out of getting all the dirt out of the back of the car and filling those up. It makes me very excited because I am ready to plant these things, and I hope to go to a garden store soon, or talk to friends and get some starts and some roots and everything in the ground, and get them growing. And here you see the end result of the dirt in these planter beds, and I didn't really need dirt. It was just kind of like framing them out, but I decided to fill them up and just kind of make them look like my other ones, so I'm excited to get them going. So today I went out this morning and I took a look at my garden, as I tend to do each week. Here you see my garlic and my raspberries doing pretty well. Here are my beets that I planted last week. They're hard to see. A lot of these things are going to be small, so they're hard to see against the dirt, but they're all doing really well. Here's an update on my fava beans, which continue to look like they're doing well. My onions, also, all the ones that I planted out have survived and are also doing well. Here's another look at the peas as of this morning, and you can see the newer peas that I planted versus the older peas, and none of the new seeds that I planted have germinated. Here's a look at my lettuces. They're all doing really well as well, except for the ones that I lost because of bugs or whatever, and those little tiny ones that I planted out that were just seedlings that I threw in the ground just to try, they also are surviving, so that's good. Here's a look at my broccoli. I've got one that's really ready to be pulled out and the other ones which are still producing lots of florets. My strawberry patch is looking really nice and growing in. I'm excited about that. And I do have one leftover kale that I'm leaving in the ground for the pollinators. Here's just a quick overview of the garden. It's not very full at this point in time, and everything that's in the ground is pretty small. But I thought I'd sort of take this look at the garden to be able to compare it to later in the year. And here's a look at the seedlings as of this morning. And you've got my spinach coming up, and I've got some sweet pea flowers coming up, and then here's some more spinach and kale and cabbage and all the things that I've got going on. I didn't divide all my lettuces, so here's a bunch of lettuces still in those trays. But I think it's cabbage, kale, cauliflower, lettuce, spinach. Here's some, my tomatoes have not yet popped out, but that's okay. I just started them earlier this week. I've got some flowers that I do for annuals. And then my onions, I had this whole new tray of onions that I was just trying to get them to go. And some of them are coming up. So I've got my fingers crossed that these will germinate and end up looking really well. And like I said, I'll keep you guys updated on the status of the seedlings as I go along. But I thought I'd just end this video with a time lapse of some clouds from a hike that I took this week.